I'm Dare, as I was introduced. My very last garage sale was a garage sale, trail garage sale, also Barbara. And I've been at Reverse Garbage for the last 2 years, which stops me doing garage sales because I just bring stuff into work instead. So today what I'm going to do is just I think the others have been talking a bit about, the bigger picture of reuse, and also, one case study and one way that we're doing it. Reverse Garbage has been actually working much more with businesses than in the domestic market for over 40 years. So I'm going to cover very quickly a little bit of our history, a few of the facts and figures, and then really what I'd like to do is look at 4 key factors that I think are things for people to think about if they're embarking on social enterprise and interested in trying to grow a small one or ensure longevity. And then I'll look at where we're seeing ourselves going over the next couple of years. So our purpose when we were set up, and continues to be, to reduce waste going to landfill through reuse, to provide education, and to demonstrate the value of a social enterprise model. From the very early days, that was always part of what we were doing, before really we were talking social enterprise in the 1970s. And I'm just looking around, my eye is catching people that I know. Hi, Tony. And so, again, what are we counting and how can we say what are our facts and figures? I've just pulled a few that I thought would be relevant to people here. We estimate that there are about 75,000 people that visit us in Marrickville every year, come into the warehouse looking for materials. About 10,000 people in 2016 participated in our education programs, and every month we're interacting with about 25 businesses and diverting about 90 cubic meters of waste. So on some of the big waste scales, that wouldn't be big cubic meterage, but our education is where we see our biggest impact. And I think the other thing for us in the reuse sector to be looking at is how many times did someone purchase reuse rather than purchasing new? And how are we saving resources that way? So not only looking in terms of our waste hierarchy at what are we saving from landfill, but what are we also, how are we reducing resource use in the beginning by encouraging people not to buy new things. And I think that's something that's going to be very hard for us to quantify, but is really important as we're looking at the impact in our sector. Reverse Garbage is run, as most social enterprises, by some paid staff, and we have quite a lot of volunteers. If people are more interested in the facts and figures, I have a stand that's just outside on your way going back to where the rest of the exhibition stands are, and I have a few more details there. So as I said, we were established over 40 years ago. We're actually a Whitlam government project. I know when people are thinking about the Whitlam government achievements, Reverse Garbage is one of the first things that comes to mind. I'm very proud to be part of that legacy. And it was a very small grant. It was less than $10,000 that started us up over the first 2 years. And really, so from the beginning, it was the sale of the materials, it was member fees that was really the foundation of the income. We were incorporated as a not-for-profit in 1976. We've had and that has really been a very solid thread all the way through, although we have updated our registration and our constitution a few times through that period. Since 1991, we have had no recurrent core funding of any sort and have been entirely self-funding our operations and subsidizing our education program. So there have been some, thank you, there have been some small project grants through that time, but by and large, we operate very much standing on our own 2 feet, which through the swings and roundabouts of various funding cycles has really stood us in good stead. And I'll speak a little more about that in a minute. As I said, we started with a focus on education and working for educators and people working with children. It wasn't long really at all before artists and people in the community theater sector really came to know us, and now we have both donors and customers in those sectors. Marrickville has been our primary location, proudly at the Addison Road Community Center, for the entire period of our existence, but we've often had a secondary location. Now we see our secondary location really is the online location, although we would hope probably in the next 3 to 6 years to be opening other physical locations as well. We began in the early 2000s to really focus on campaigns related to waste and other related social justice issues. And in very recent times, we have had a very strong focus on professional development, particularly for teachers and early childhood educators. And we see ourselves continuing to grow in that area significantly. It's an area that we're working a lot with a wide variety of councils who are engaging us to do education with their childcare centers. So 40 years, how did we keep going, and what are the factors that have really enabled us to be able to be solid and to continue to be relevant from a time where, you know, this is really before the Do the Right Thing campaign, through all of that period, and now where we're looking at planet security and climate security as a key issue that wasn't being considered as a mainstream issue in the 1970s. And really, innovation, renewal have been absolutely central. I put those first. Having a clear business acumen and an understanding that we're a member organization at the same time. And blending those two together. The ongoing contribution of volunteers and donations and reinvestment of the energy and resources, and a focus on our core principles. So if I say innovation and renewal, these are very common words now, and what I'm thinking about in terms of that is the processes that we've used. And I'll go back to some work that we did a couple of years ago, and I think this has happened regularly through the history, which has been really stopping, taking stock, where are we up to, looking at the strategic planning, and we did a big process of engaging really a 360 degrees with our colleagues, with businesses who were contributing to us, with members, with people who weren't at all involved, and really putting all of that information together and seeing where do people see where we are and what we are doing as important. And as I look back through our history, I see that that happened. I think that making change is a slow process in any organization. So I suggest that that is a really good sort of 5-year approach. And as I look back through the organization, I see those changes happening in that, 4 to 6 year increments where there was a similar approach happening, and then you see a slight change and a similar approach happening. And it's that kind of shifting and constant reflection that really has stood the organization in good stead. As I was saying a minute ago, the approach has been, from the beginning, understanding, even when they didn't have the language of social enterprise, saying, I hear some of the early people who were involved with the establishment saying, we always knew we had to use business processes for a social purpose. Now, that's quite common language to us now. In the 1970s, it was something quite new and different that they were doing. But that has continued to be part of our focus. while at the same time being aware we have over many periods in the organization's history looked at, should we stop being a co-op? Should we change to a different type of incorporated body? And it has continued to come back, know that focus on membership and understanding where we came from and that we're doing this working together continues to be a really important underpinning factor within how the organization functions and keeping us clear to our message. The volunteer contributions and reinvestment, we are really less about the waste to wages because we have had a very, very small workforce. Right now, we only have 10 people who are employed, and many of, almost half of them have been employed for more than 10 years with the organization. So I kind of feel like a bit of a phony saying waste to wages, where it's like a small group that's had long-term employment. But where we have provided that changing has been through the volunteer contributions, and that has been incredibly extensive. So that's everything from the 4 boys that come from a local high school now on Friday afternoons to do their 2 hours each week for Duke of Edinburgh award scheme, and them seeing themselves as being part of that neighborhood and part of that community and able to contribute to, you know, incredible professionals such as Vicky, who came in last week, who's a local woman who has had a long association with reverse garbage. She is a very accomplished PR professional and copywriter, and she's sat down with us and looked at where can we go for your next step in terms of development of your media and communications, and really that whole gamut. But the section that has been our biggest support has been working with individuals that are feeling more disconnected from society and from the community, in particular ex-offenders or people with long-term mental illness. And those are 2 groups that have, because of the nature of our work, the opportunities for them to volunteer and do things that are physical but still meaningful, and to really be embedded as part of our organization has been a really proud part of the reverse garbage story for many, many years. And then I think the whole thing would fall apart if we didn't remain absolutely focused on what is our objective. So being really clear that those 3 principles, educating, reducing waste, creating change, as central to everything we do. And when we stop and we have businesses or community organizations contact us and say, what about partnering with this, what about that? It gives us a very clear focus to come back to say, is this helping us to educate people about sustainability? Is this helping us reduce waste? Is this helping to create change about those things? And that allows us to really stay focused on what we're doing and not try to be every man's answer to every problem, but to stay focused on what we are doing, which isn't what every other of our colleagues who are part of the community recycling network is doing. But if all of us are working on our different aspects, and for us, that often comes down to that connection between how much do we work with domestic waste and how much are we working with industrial waste. And I know a lot of our council supporters and council partners would like us to try and be more involved in dealing with problem domestic waste, and that's been something that we've said, really, there are other folks that are focusing on that, and we're staying really with our main emphasis being the industrial waste that we started working with and that we continue to focus on. So being clear about what we're doing and what others are doing has been an important part, I think, of our success, because I think the issues in waste and in sustainability are so enormous it would be easy to be pulled away. And I think that our scalability is stronger if we stay focused to what we've been doing. And for the next couple of years, our strategic plan is very much focused on that. We're putting education first now, and really looking at that as the area where we can make the greatest impact. Not only because it's so hard to measure the waste diversion with stuff when things come from, you know, a bootload of grandma's old craft gear to an entire truckload of you know, excess stock from a homeware shop. Trying to measure those kinds of things and see how would we quantify that is very difficult. But looking at how many people and how many children, you know, when we try and do the maths and say, well, if yesterday I did an education program for 30 childcare workers, some of them quite new in their career. If they continue to work in childcare for the next 10 or 20 years, what's the impact for them with the children that they're working with and with embedding that early habits around reuse and sustainability? So that's where we're looking at our impact over time. So that was really all I wanted to share with you today. I'm also going to be here for the entire conference. We have a stand. I'm going to be at the stand at the breaks and lunch hour if people are looking for me. And if people have any comments or want some more information, I'm more than happy to talk to people then. Or if you have any questions now.
Yep, we have